What if the secret to making her chase you had nothing to do with pickup lines, gifts, or grand gestures, but everything to do with how you carry yourself in silence? Stoicism, the ancient philosophy practiced by emperors and warriors, holds the answer. Imagine projecting such unshakable confidence, such magnetic presence, that words become almost unnecessary. This isn't about manipulation or playing games. It's about mastering your inner world so completely that your energy alone becomes irresistible. The Stoics knew something modern dating advice often misses. True attraction starts from within, and the most powerful signals you send aren't spoken at all. Think about the last time you met someone who radiated calm certainty, the kind of person who seemed completely at ease in their own skin. Their silence wasn't awkward, it was intriguing. Their posture wasn't desperate, it was commanding. That's the power of Stoic presence. Women, and people in general, are drawn to those who embody emotional mastery, not because they're trying to impress, but because they've cultivated something rare, a deep, unshakable self-assurance. And here's the thing, this isn't some mystical trait reserved for a lucky few. It's a skill honed through principles that have stood the test of time. In this video, we're diving into 25 Stoic strategies that will transform how you show up in every interaction. These aren't cheap tricks or superficial tactics. They're rooted in philosophy, refined through centuries, and designed to help you become the kind of man who naturally commands attention without saying a word. You'll learn how to use silence as strength, how to project confidence through subtle body language, and how to cultivate an energy that makes you unforgettable. This is about more than dating, it's about rewiring your mindset so that your very presence becomes your most compelling asset. Ready to unlock the Stoic secrets that make pursuit inevitable. Let's begin. The first and most foundational Stoic secret to making her chase you: master the art of presence, not just physically being there, but fully inhabiting the moment with unwavering focus. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, wrote extensively about this in his private journals, reminding himself to confine yourself to the present amid the chaos of ruling an empire. Imagine applying that same discipline to your interactions. When you're truly present, undistracted, unhurried, completely engaged, you send a silent but powerful message. You're someone worth paying attention to. Think about the last time someone genuinely listened to you, not just waited for their turn to speak, but absorbed every word with quiet intensity. That level of attention is rare, and that's precisely what makes it magnetic. Stoics called this proseuche, the practice of mindful attention. It's not passive, it's an active choice to shut out external noise and internal chatter. When you lock eyes without glancing away nervously, when you listen without mentally rehearsing your response, you project a confidence that's far more attractive than any rehearsed compliment. History offers striking examples. Take Cato the Younger, whose presence was so commanding that even his political enemies couldn't help but respect him. Plutarch wrote that Cato's silent endurance during debates, his refusal to fidget or look away, unnerved his opponents more than any argument. Why? Because stillness, when rooted in self-assurance, speaks louder than words. Modern research backs this up. Studies on nonverbal communication show that people who maintain steady eye contact and lean in slightly are perceived as more trustworthy and attractive. But here's the Stoic twist. It's not about performing presence to impress others. That's just another form of neediness. True presence comes from letting go of outcomes. When you stop worrying about what she thinks of you and simply immerse yourself in the exchange, something paradoxical happens. She becomes more intrigued. It's the difference between a man who's trying to be interesting and one who's genuinely interested. The first reeks of desperation, the second radiates a quiet authority that's impossible to ignore. Try this today. In your next conversation, focus entirely on the other person. Notice the cadence of their voice, the flicker of emotions across their face. Resist the urge to check your phone or glance around the room. That single shift from scattered to fully engaged will do more to elevate your presence than any pickup line ever could. Because when you master the art of being here now, you're not just practicing Stoicism, you're becoming the kind of man who naturally draws others in. Now let's move to the second Stoic way to make her chase you without saying a word, cultivating unshakable calm. Epictetus, the former slave who became one of history's greatest philosophers, put it bluntly, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That single idea holds the key to projecting a strength that quietly commands respect and intrigue. Think about it. When a man remains unruffled in moments that would rattle most people, what does that communicate? It signals a depth of self-control, a mastery over emotions that instantly elevates him in any interaction. Consider two scenarios. First, she playfully teases you, testing your reaction. The average guy might stumble over his words, get defensive, or worse, lash out with insecure sarcasm. Now imagine the alternative. You lean back slightly, exhale with an amused smile, and let the comment hang in the air for just a beat too long. That pause, that total absence of panic, speaks volumes. It tells her you're not easily shaken, that your self-worth isn't up for debate. That's the kind of quiet confidence that flips attraction switches without a single word. History offers a masterclass in this principle. Take Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon, a point of no return that would spark civil war. Plutarch describes him showing no visible agitation, even as he committed an act that could mean his death. That calm wasn't indifference, it was the product of years practicing Stoic detachment from outcomes. Modern neuroscience confirms why this works. Studies show people unconsciously mirror the emotional states of those around them. When you project calm, she'll start feeling it too, a subtle but powerful emotional draw. But here's the critical distinction. Stoic calm isn't about suppressing emotions or putting on a stone-faced act. That's just another form of reaction, another way of being controlled by external events. True calm comes from the Stoic discipline of differentiating what's within your control, your judgments and actions, from what isn't her words, others' opinions. When someone insults you or flirts unpredictably, the Stoic doesn't think, "This shouldn't be happening." He thinks, "How will I choose to respond?" That shift in perspective changes everything. Practice this today. Next time you feel provoked, whether by a challenging comment, an unexpected rejection, or even traffic, pause. Observe the physical sensations of anger or anxiety rising, then consciously loosen your shoulders, slow your breathing. That tiny space between stimulus and response, that's where Stoic strength is built. Because when you stop being jerked around by external events, you become the steady point in her world, and that's irresistible. The third Stoic strategy that transforms how women perceive you, embracing Amor Fati. The radical acceptance of everything life throws your way, especially the challenges. This isn't passive resignation, it's an active love of fate, a mindset that turns setbacks into fuel for growth. Imagine two men face the same rejection. One spirals into self-doubt while the other shrugs with a quiet smile, seeing it as a chance to refine his approach. Which one leaves her wondering what he knows that others don't? That's the power of Amor Fati. It makes you unshakably attractive because you're no longer afraid of life's curveballs. Friedrich Nietzsche, who studied Stoicism deeply, captured this perfectly. My formula for greatness is Amor Fati, not wanting anything to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. In dating terms, it means her lukewarm response or sudden silence isn't a threat to your confidence. It's just another thread in the tapestry of your journey. When you stop resisting discomfort and start embracing it, something shifts. She'll notice the way you handle rejection with grace, how you don't chase validation after a cancelled date. That quiet resilience signals something rare, a man who's at peace with uncertainty, and that's magnetic. History shows this principle in action. Take Thomas Edison, who embodied Amor Fati long before his name became legendary. When his lab burned down, destroying years of work, he didn't collapse in despair. He famously said, "There's value in disaster. All our mistakes are burned up." Now we can start fresh. That attitude, seeing ruin as renewal, is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. Apply that to dating. When she ghosts you or a connection fizzles, the Stoic doesn't lament lost chances. He asks, "What does this free me to pursue?" That reframe changes everything. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies on stress inoculation show that people who view challenges as opportunities develop thicker emotional resilience, and that resilience is palpable. It's in your posture when you laugh off an awkward moment instead of cringing, in the ease with which you pivot when plans change. Amor Fati isn't about pretending things don't sting, it's about trusting the sting has purpose. Every rejection becomes data, every silence becomes space for self-reflection, and when she senses you're not rattled by life's unpredictability, that's when she starts chasing, because you've shown her a version of masculinity that's not contingent on her approval. Here's how to practice this today. Next time something doesn't go your way, a flaky text, a last-minute rain check, a pause. Instead of reacting, say to yourself, "This too is for my good." Then watch how quickly anxiety turns into curiosity. That shift from resisting fate to loving it is where true intrigue begins. Because when you stop fearing life's twists, you become the one thing no algorithm can predict, a man who's authentically, irresistibly at ease in the chaos. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who advised Emperor Nero, had little patience for hollow words. He wrote, "Stop talking about what a good man should be one." That razor-sharp wisdom cuts to the heart of our fourth Stoic strategy, letting your actions build attraction silently but unmistakably. Think about the last time someone promised you the world with flowery speeches but never followed through. Now contrast that with the person who simply showed up consistently, reliably, without fanfare. Which one commanded your respect? Which one lingered in your memory? That's the power of action over words, and it's a principle that transforms how women perceive you. This isn't about grand romantic gestures or expensive gifts. Those are easy, anyone can throw money at a problem. The Stoic approach is subtler and far more potent. It's the barrister who remembers her usual order before she speaks it. The man who arrives precisely on time because he respects her schedule as much as his own. These seem like small things, but they telegraph something profound. You're a man who pays attention, who aligns his actions with his values. And that consistency, day after day, interaction after interaction, creates a gravitational pull no pickup line can match. History offers a masterclass in this principle through Seneca himself. Though he lived in a palace, he famously practiced voluntary discomfort, sleeping on hard beds, eating simple meals, to prove to himself that his philosophy wasn't just talk. That congruence between belief and behavior is what made him compelling even to those who disagreed with him. Modern research confirms why this works. Studies on trust building show that reliability triggers oxytocin release in the brain, the same chemical associated with emotional bonding. When she sees you follow through repeatedly, it doesn't just make you dependable, it makes you chemically irresistible. But here's where most men stumble. They mistake action for overeagerness. The Stoic difference, purposeful restraint. Holding the door isn't impressive if you're doing it for praise. Remembering her birthday means nothing if you announce you remembered it. True action speaks for itself, like the Roman general who calmly secured his armor before battle while others boasted, or the jazz musician who lets the silence between notes build anticipation. Your power lies in what you do without announcing it, in the quiet confidence of a man who knows his worth doesn't need constant validation. Try this today. Identify one small action you can take without expecting recognition, maybe sending that article she mentioned weeks ago or noticing when she shifts to decaf in the evenings. Then watch how these unspoken gestures piled up over time create a foundation of trust no amount of sweet talk can replicate. Because when your actions consistently outpace your words, you're not just practicing Stoicism, you're becoming the kind of man women naturally want to chase. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, had a radical philosophy: seek discomfort voluntarily, not as punishment, not as a stunt, but as training for the soul. He argued that luxury weakens us while hardship strengthens resilience, writing that luxury and self-indulgence lead to cowardice and vice. Now imagine applying that to attraction. When a man voluntarily embraces minor discomforts, fasting occasionally, taking cold showers, waking without snoozing, he's not just building discipline. He's broadcasting something primal. This is someone prepared for life's inevitable storms, and that readiness, when subtly conveyed, becomes magnetically attractive. Consider two men on a date. One complains when the restaurant's air conditioning is too strong. The other removes his jacket without comment and engages fully despite the chill. That tiny moment reveals volumes. The first signals he's at the mercy of external conditions. The second demonstrates mastery over them. This isn't about pretending to enjoy discomfort, it's about showcasing that minor inconveniences don't derail your presence. Women intuitively recognize this trait as evolutionary gold, a partner who won't crumble under pressure. But here's where most men miss the mark: voluntary discomfort isn't performative suffering. Posting gym selfies at dawn or loudly announcing your water fast, that reeks of seeking validation, the opposite of Stoic virtue. The true power lies in silence. When she casually notices you're unfazed by a delayed meal or a sudden downpour, your lack of complaint speaks louder than any boast. History's greatest Stoics understood this nuance. Cato wore simple tunics in Rome's Senate not to provoke admiration, but to prove clothing couldn't define him. His indifference to comfort wasn't a display, it was a quiet declaration of inner sovereignty. Modern science validates this approach. Studies on delayed gratification, like the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment, show that people who tolerate short-term discomfort for long-term gains excel in relationships. Why? Because life with a partner inevitably involves sacrifices, sleepless nights with children, financial tight spots, emotional labor. When she sees you voluntarily practice discomfort now, she unconsciously registers your capacity to handle future challenges together. So how do you integrate this authentically? Start small. Skip the elevator and take stairs, not for calories burned, but for the mental reminder that ease isn't entitlement. Drink your coffee black occasionally to savor simplicity. Each tiny act builds what the Stoics called apatheia, not apathy, but freedom from being ruled by petty desires. Over time, these choices reshape your presence. You'll carry yourself differently, less reactive, more resilient, and that quiet transformation, that's what makes her lean in, intrigued by the man who seems untouched by life's trivial disturbances. The key isn't to suffer, but to demonstrate through action that comfort doesn't own you. Because when she senses you've conquered the urge for constant ease, she'll glimpse the kind of strength that lasts, the kind no fleeting attraction can match. The sixth Stoic strategy that shifts the dynamic is embracing what philosophers called the reserve clause, the subtle art of investing fully while relinquishing attachment to results. Picture this: you spot someone captivating across the room. Instead of rehearsing lines or anticipating rejection, you silently affirm, "I'll introduce myself, but the outcome isn't mine to control." That shift from demanding certainty to welcoming uncertainty does something remarkable. It removes the scent of desperation, replacing it with an air of effortless confidence. The ancient Stoics framed this as hypexerces, a mental footnote to every plan, fate permitting. When you internalize that mindset, your energy transforms. You stop leaning into interactions like a salesman needing a deal and start engaging like a traveler curious about the next bend in the road. History offers a striking example in Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. After losing his entire fortune in a shipwreck, he didn't crumble. Instead, he wandered into an Athens bookstore, stumbled upon Socrates' teachings, and rebuilt his life as a philosopher. His famous quote, "I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck," that's the reserve clause in action, recognizing that setbacks might be redirecting you towards something better. Apply this to dating. When an approach doesn't lead to a number or a conversation fizzles, the Stoic doesn't see failure. He sees redirection. That detachment isn't indifference, it's wisdom in motion. Modern psychology confirms why this works. Studies on cognitive behavioral therapy rooted in Stoic principles show that people who decouple effort from outcome experience less anxiety and higher performance. In dating terms, when you stop measuring success by her response and start valuing your own courage regardless of results, something paradoxical happens. You become more attractive because neediness evaporates. Your laughter isn't forced, your stories aren't overpolished, your silence isn't desperate. You're fully there, yet completely free, and that freedom is magnetic. But here's the critical nuance most miss. The reserve clause isn't about shrugging ambivalence. It's not, "I don't care what happens," it's, "I care deeply, but my worth isn't tied to this moment." Imagine asking her out with zero expectation yet total presence. You're not nervously gauging her reaction, you're savoring the act of connection itself. That balance between wholehearted action and serene detachment creates a pull stronger than any scripted charm. Like a musician lost in the song rather than obsessing over applause, you become the experience itself, not the beggar of a particular result. Practice this today. Before your next social interaction, whisper the reserve clause to yourself. "I'll engage fully, but the outcome is none of my business." Feel how that lifts an invisible weight. Watch how your shoulders relax, your eye contact steadies, your humor flows unforced. Because when you stop treating every encounter like a test, you start radiating the very thing that makes her want to chase. The quiet assurance of a man who knows his value exists regardless of any single moment's verdict. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, warned against the danger of careless speech, famously comparing the tongue to an untamed horse. Once words gallop out, there's no reining them back in. This seventh Stoic strategy hinges on that wisdom, using silence not as an absence, but as a deliberate tool to command attention and spark intrigue. Imagine a conversation where most men rush to fill every pause with nervous chatter or over-explanation. Now picture yourself comfortable in the stillness, letting a question hang in the air a second longer than expected. That tension isn't empty space, it's magnetic. It's the difference between handing her every answer and leaving room for her imagination to chase you. History offers a masterclass in this through Zeno himself. Diogenes Laertius recorded that the philosopher often responded to questions with such measured silence that students leaned in, hanging on eventual words that carried far more weight for the wait. Apply this to dating. When she asks why you're single or what you're looking for, resisting the urge to overshare isn't evasion, it's strategy. A slight smirk followed by, "I could tell you, but where's the fun in that?" does more to pique interest than any exhaustive relationship resume. The silence between your words becomes the canvas where she paints her own curiosity. Modern psychology confirms why this works. Studies on conversational dynamics show that pauses of just 2 to 3 seconds trigger what researchers call the itch to fill, an almost compulsive need to break the silence with personal revelations or validation-seeking chatter. When you're the one comfortable in that quiet, 2 things happen. First, she unconsciously associates your restraint with depth and control. Second, she'll often rush to fill the gap, revealing more about herself in the process. It's the verbal equivalent of stepping back and watching someone lean forward. But here's the critical distinction: Stoic silence isn't the cold shoulder or manipulative game playing. It's the art of knowing that not every thought needs voice, and that sometimes the most powerful statement is a raised eyebrow instead of a paragraph. Contrast this with the average guy who, at the first sign of her disinterest, doubles down with desperate explanations or compliments. The over-explainer screams insecurity, while the man who wields silence wisely signals he's unfazed by temporary lulls. Like a jazz musician who understands the space between notes creates the melody, you'll find that what you don't say often resonates loudest. Practice this today. In your next conversation, insert one intentional pause, maybe after she asks your opinion or shares something vulnerable. Count 2 heartbeats in your head before responding. Notice how the air charges with anticipation, because when you stop fearing quiet, you start speaking a language more compelling than words. The language of a man who knows his worth doesn't depend on constant chatter. And that's when the chase begins. Marcus Aurelius often practiced what Stoics called the view from above, stepping back mentally to see life from a cosmic perspective. Picture Earth from space, continents without borders, civilizations reduced to fleeting specks, your personal dramas dwarfed by the universe's vastness. That shift in vantage point wasn't just philosophical musing, it was a practical tool for cultivating unshakable poise. Now imagine bringing that same expansive mindset into your conversations. When you speak about your passions, whether it's stargazing, marine biology, or the history of ancient trade routes, with genuine awe for their scale, something unexpected happens. You're no longer just a guy sharing hobbies, you're a man who contemplates humanity's place in the grand tapestry. And that shift, when subtle and grounded, quietly elevates your presence in ways no bragging ever could. Take astronomy as an example. Most men might point out a constellation to impress, the Stoic approach. When I look at Orion's belt, I think about how those photons traveled for hundreds of years just to hit my retina, how we're literally seeing the past when we gaze at stars. Notice the difference. One's a party trick, the other reveals a mind attuned to life's profundities. This isn't about name-dropping philosophers or forcing cosmic talk into casual chats. It's about letting your natural curiosity for larger themes infuse your words with gravity. Historians recorded that Marcus Aurelius could discuss military logistics and the nature of time in the same breath, a balance of practicality and depth that made even his enemies lean in. But here's the crucial boundary the Stoics drew: grand perspective must never slip into pretension. Seneca warned against using wisdom as a cloak for arrogance. Dropping cant quotes at a barbecue or lecturing about entropy over cocktails isn't depth, it's insecurity in scholars' clothing. The magic lies in weaving wonder into relatable moments. Instead of, I read Marcus Aurelius, try, there's this idea from an old Roman emperor that even his palace was just a temporary shelter, like a tent. Makes you rethink what we chase, doesn't it? That's the sweet spot, expansive yet accessible, profound without being ponderous. Modern research explains why this works. Studies on conversational charisma show people are drawn to those who introduce novel perspectives, not by dominating discussions, but by offering conceptual gifts that expand others' thinking. When you casually mention how Viking navigation mirrors modern machine learning algorithms or compare a crowded subway to neuron pathways, you're not just talking. You're inviting her into a richer way of seeing, and that shared mental journey creates a connection far deeper than small talk. Practice this today. Choose one ordinary detail, a sunset, a bustling street, and ponder its cosmic context for 30 seconds. Then find a way to share that perspective naturally in conversation, not as a monologue but as an open door. Because when she glimpses the world through your eyes, vast, interconnected, humming with hidden meaning, she's not just learning about stars or history. She's discovering how you think, and that's the kind of intrigue no pickup line can manufacture. Seneca's letters reveal a counterintuitive truth: absence often speaks louder than attention. Writing to his friend Lucilius, he advised, Hold yourself back from your subject so that you can approach it with greater appetite. That ancient wisdom holds a key to modern attraction, the strategic power of not always being available. This isn't about playing games or feigning indifference. It's about embodying a Stoic principle. Your worth isn't measured by constant accessibility. When you occasionally delay replies or prioritize your own projects, you're not manipulating her emotions. You're demonstrating something far more compelling, a life so rich and purposeful that no single person dominates it. Think about how museums display priceless art carefully spaced, never crowded together, allowing each piece room to breathe. That curation creates anticipation, making visitors lean closer to examine details. Your presence works the same way. Constant texting or instant availability is like stuffing the gallery with artwork until nothing stands out. But when you mirror Seneca's disciplined scarcity, taking hours to respond because you're immersed in meaningful work, or skipping a weekend meetup to honor prior commitments, you become that rare masterpiece she can't stop thinking about. History's greatest Stoics practiced this deliberately. Seneca himself would vanish for weeks into writing retreats, not to provoke longing in others but to sharpen his own mind. Yet those absences inevitably made his return more impactful. Here's where most men misunderstand the strategy. True Stoic absence isn't calculated silence to provoke a reaction. That's just neediness in disguise. The difference lies in your intent. Are you ignoring her message to make her wonder, or are you genuinely engaged in something more important than the ping of your phone? One reeks of manipulation, the other radiates self-possession. Modern attachment theory confirms why this works. Studies show that intermittent positive reinforcement, where attention isn't guaranteed but earned, creates stronger emotional bonds than constant availability. It's why grandparents who visit monthly leave deeper impressions than roommates you see daily. But Seneca would caution against extremes. Total withdrawal isn't the goal, balance is. A sculptor steps back from his work not to abandon it but to see it with fresh eyes. Similarly, your occasional unavailability should feel like natural ebbs in life's rhythm, not punitive silence. Maybe you take an extra hour to reply because you're hiking without your phone, or you decline a last-minute invite to finish a woodworking project. These choices whisper, "I choose you often, but not at the expense of myself," a message far more attractive than desperate eagerness. Try this next time your phone buzzes with her text. Finish your chapter, your set, or your sketch before responding. That simple pause, rooted in respect for your own time, does more to stoke intrigue than any crafted reply ever could. Because when she senses your world doesn't orbit around her messages, she'll start wondering what makes your universe so compelling. And that's when absence becomes the canvas onto which attraction paints its most vivid fantasies. Aristotle called it eudaimonia, that profound sense of fulfillment that comes not from fleeting pleasures, but from aligning your life with purpose. The Stoics took this further, arguing that true happiness stems from dedicating yourself to something greater than romance or validation. Here's why this matters in attraction. When a man burns with quiet intensity for his craft, whether it's building businesses, mastering Muay Thai, or composing sonnets, he radiates a frequency most women can't ignore. It's not about the money or fame those pursuits might bring. It's about the way his eyes ignite when he talks about his work, the way his hands move with certainty when he's in flow. That energy is magnetic because it whispers something primal. This is a man who builds things, and I could be part of what he creates. Consider two men at a gallery opening. One lingers near his date, laughing too loudly at her jokes, his attention clinging to her like static. The other, he's engrossed in a discussion about brushstroke techniques with the curator, only occasionally glancing back to include her. Paradoxically, it's the second man she'll find herself edging closer to. Why? Because purpose is the ultimate anti-neediness. When your mission matters more than any single interaction, you stop emitting desperate vibrations. You become the calm center of your own universe, and that's precisely what pulls her into your orbit. History offers a masterclass in this through Leonardo da Vinci, who embodied Stoic eudaimonia centuries before the term existed. Vasari's biographies describe him disappearing for days into dissections or experiments, often leaving patrons and lovers waiting. That singular focus wasn't neglect, it was the hallmark of a man consumed by meaningful work. Modern research validates this attraction trigger. Studies on perceived instrumentality show that people engaged in goal-directed behavior are rated as more desirable, regardless of physical appearance. When she senses you're building toward something, coding an app, restoring classic cars, studying Stoic philosophy itself, she doesn't just see you, she sees the future version of you, and that potential is intoxicating. But here's where most stumble. They mistake purpose for performative busyness. Posting hustle culture quotes or name-dropping projects reeks of insecurity. True mission energy is quieter. It's the calluses on your hands from late-night woodworking, the dog-eared pages of your engineering notebooks, the way you instinctively wake at dawn because your brain won't let you sleep through ideas. That authenticity can't be faked, and when she catches you in those unguarded moments, lost in your element, forgetting to impress anyone, that's when she'll feel the gravitational pull of a man who doesn't need her approval to feel whole. The Stoic twist: this isn't about using purpose as bait. Epictetus warned against externalizing your worth. If you wish to be a writer, write, but don't crave the title author. The goal isn't to appear driven, it's to be driven with or without an audience. That's why the most compelling men often seem oblivious to their own magnetism. They're not calculating how their passion projects look to others, they're too immersed in the work itself. And that disconnect between their focus and her growing curiosity creates the exact tension that makes pursuit inevitable. Try this reframe. Next time you're tempted to cancel your weekend project for a date, don't. Instead, invite her into your world. I'm excavating a Roman coin from this lump of clay Saturday. Wanna watch the process? That simple choice, honoring your purpose while including her, communicates more than any grand gesture could. Because when she sees you as a man who chooses growth over validation, she'll start choosing you, not for what you give her, but for who you become when you're fully alive. And that's the alchemy no dating tactic can replicate. The 11th Stoic strategy that reshapes attraction dynamics lies in mastering proxemics, the silent language of space. Picture two men entering a crowded villa in ancient Rome. One shuffles along the walls, shoulders slightly hunched, as if apologizing for his presence. The other moves with deliberate ease, pausing to admire a fresco, his open posture casually claiming territory like a general surveying conquered land. That difference between occupying space and inhabiting it speaks volumes before either utters a word. The Stoics understood this instinctively. While they preached humility internally, their external presence projected quiet authority through calculated use of physical space. Roman frescoes and statues reveal the blueprint. Senators depicted with one arm resting lightly on a hip, creating triangular space between elbow and torso, a posture subcommunicating relaxation amid tension. Gladiators stood with feet slightly wider than shoulder width, not in aggressive stances but in grounded readiness. These weren't theatrical power poses, they were reflections of an inner certainty that didn't require validation. Modern research confirms their impact. Studies on nonverbal dominance show that individuals who expand their spatial footprint, leaning back in chairs rather than perching forward, angling knees outward instead of tightly together, are perceived as 23% more confident and socially attractive. But here's where most men misinterpret spatial confidence. It's not about puffing your chest or invading personal boundaries. That's insecurity in disguise. True Stoic proxemics mirror Seneca's advice. Be like the rocky headland against which waves break. Your movement should convey stability, not aggression. Practice this today. Enter any room and identify natural anchor points: a bookshelf to linger near, a windowsill to lean against. Claim these spaces not by dominating them, but by occupying them with the unhurried grace of someone who belongs. Marcus Aurelius modeled this during turbulent Senate meetings. Historical accounts describe him standing perfectly still during heated debates, his rooted presence making shouting opponents seem unmoored by comparison. The secret lies in what body language experts call slow motion economy. Watch any seasoned warrior in historical texts, from Roman centurions to samurai, and you'll notice their movements unfold like honey pouring. A hand adjusting a cloak becomes a deliberate act. A turn of the head carries weight. Modern neuroscience explains why this captivates. Our brains assign higher value to stimuli that demand sustained attention. When you reach for your wine glass with measured control instead of anxious speed, she'll unconsciously assign greater importance to everything you do. It's the difference between a flickering candle and a steady torch. Both provide light, but one commands focus. Apply this to interactions. Next time you sit across from her, resist the urge to fidget or fold inward. Rest your forearm on the table with palm open, creating spatial ownership without encroachment. When rising, push up through your heels rather than lurching forward, small shifts that telegraph grounded assurance. Like a Stoic philosopher lecturing in the agora, your silent presence should whisper, "I need no validation to occupy my rightful space," because when you stop negotiating your existence with the world, and she starts making room for you. Seneca's most counterintuitive and electrifying technique was premeditatio malorum, the deliberate practice of imagining worst-case scenarios to drain them of their terror. At first glance, this seems antithetical to attraction. Why visualize losing her when you're trying to make her chase you? But here's the Stoic twist. By mentally rehearsing loss, you strip away the desperation that repels. Picture this: you're on a date, completely present, teasing her about her terrible taste in pizza toppings. Normally, a part of you might be white-knuckling the interaction, terrified of saying the wrong thing. Now imagine you've already visualized her ghosting you tomorrow and discovered you'd still be whole. That realization, that your worth isn't hostage to any single outcome, unlocks a playful freedom most men never experience. History preserves a stunning example in Seneca's letters to Lucilius. He describes walking through his lavish home each evening, whispering to himself, "All this could be gone tomorrow." Not with dread, but with quiet gratitude. Apply that to dating. When you wake up and briefly envision her moving on, dating friends, even marrying someone else, and then feel your heartbeat steady despite the mental exercise, you achieve what Seneca called the poverty of the fortunate. You're not ruined by the fantasy because you've already made peace with impermanence. That emotional inoculation transforms how you interact. Your jokes land crisper because there's no silent plea for approval underneath them. Your touch lingers with confidence because you're not mentally tallying whether she'll allow a second date. Modern psychology confirms this works through a mechanism called stress exposure therapy. Navy SEAL mentally rehearse mission failures to reduce panic when real bullets fly. Similarly, when you regularly visualize romantic rejection not as a morbid fixation, but as philosophical training, your brain stops treating it as an existential threat. Studies show that people who practice premeditation of adversities develop what researchers call emotional shock absorption, allowing them to remain composed in high-stakes social situations. That composure becomes magnetic. She'll notice how you're the only man who didn't nervously check his phone after she excused herself to the restroom, the one whose smile never wavers when conversation lulls. But here's the critical distinction most miss. This isn't about expecting failure or assuming disinterest. That breeds bitterness. True premeditatio malorum is done with detachment, like a surgeon practicing incisions on fruit before the operating room. When you flirt after this mental preparation, it carries a paradoxical energy, total engagement mixed with utter non-attachment. You'll tease her about stealing your favorite hoodie someday, all while knowing you'd survive if she never saw you again. That balance between warmth and self-sufficiency creates a pull stronger than any neediness ever could. Try this today. Spend 2 minutes visualizing her canceling your next date, then watch how your brain scrambles to resolve the scenario. Sit with the discomfort until you feel your shoulders relax. That tiny liberation from fear of loss, that's the space where irresistible attraction grows. Because when she senses you're not clutching at her for salvation, she'll start wondering what makes you so unshakable, and that curiosity is the beginning of every chase. Epictetus drew a line in the sand 2,000 years ago that still separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. Some things are within our control, others are not. That simple distinction holds the key to projecting an aura of quiet authority that makes women lean in. Consider how most men react when dragged into trivial dramas: workplace politics, social media feuds, frenemies gossiping about who liked whose photo. Eyeballs dart, pulses quicken, fingers type out reactive comments. Now picture the alternative. You exhale slowly, almost amused, as if watching children quarrel over sidewalk chalk. That calm isn't indifference, it's the visible manifestation of a mind that categorizes conflict like a librarian sorting books. What's worth your energy? What's just noise? That discernment, when she witnesses it, signals something rare. A man who won't be knocked off center by life's petty storms. George Clooney embodies this Stoic principle perfectly. When tabloids published false stories about his marriage during the early years with Amal, his response wasn't fiery denials or passive-aggressive tweets. He simply told reporters, "I don't pay attention to opinions that don't matter." No anger, no wounded ego, just a gentle redirection of focus toward what actually deserved his time. That graceful dismissal of trivialities didn't make him seem detached, it made him magnetic. Because when a man refuses to engage with nonsense, he silently declares his energy is too valuable to waste. Women intuitively recognize this as leadership, not the kind that demands followers, but the quiet sovereignty that naturally draws people toward its gravity. The Stoic secret here isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending not to care. It's about developing what the ancient Greeks called eustatheia, mental stability anchored in clear priorities. Think of Marcus Aurelius journaling amid Rome's endless conspiracies, focusing only on his own virtues rather than palace intrigues. Or Epictetus advising students to treat insults like stones thrown at a statue. They may clatter loudly but leave no mark on the bronze. Modern neuroscience confirms why this works. fMRI scans show that people who practice cognitive distancing, the Stoic dichotomy of control in lab coats, have significantly lower amygdala activation during conflicts. Translation: they're not bottling up reactions, they've genuinely rewired their brains to perceive pettiness as background static. Try this litmus test. Next time someone tries to pull you into gossip, channel your inner Stoic auditor. Ask silently, does this concern something within my control? Will engaging improve my character or purpose? If the answer's no, respond with the bemused detachment of a professor watching freshmen debate metaphysics. Not with arrogance, but with the quiet confidence of a man who knows his attention is currency and spends it only where the returns enrich his soul. Because when she sees you navigate pettiness like a captain steering clear of shallow waters, she'll start craving the depth you inhabit. And that's when she begins chasing what most men never even realize: they've lost the power of undisturbed focus. There's a reason statues of Stoic philosophers all share one striking feature: those piercing, unwavering eyes. The ancients called it oculus animi, the eye of the soul, and it was their secret weapon for commanding attention without uttering a syllable. Picture this: you're locked in conversation, and instead of the darting glances or nervous blinking most men default to, your gaze holds steady, not staring but seeing. That fractional pause before you blink, the slight narrowing as you process her words, The way your focus doesn't fracture when someone walks by, these micro-signals telegraph a control so complete, it bypasses logic and hooks directly into primal attraction. The Stoics perfected this silent language. Cicero wrote of Cato's ability to silence entire Senate debates just by leveling his gaze, and Plutarch described Gaius Marius' stare as a sword sheathed in patience. Modern science confirms why this works. Studies at the University of Aberdeen found that eye contact boosts attractiveness by 18%, while Harvard research revealed that holding gaze for 3.2 seconds, just beyond the average person's comfort zone, triggers a dopamine response linked to romantic interest. But here's where most men fail. They either glance away like startled deer or fixate like predators. The Stoic balance follow this three-step ritual. First, anchor your gaze slightly above her eyes. The space between eyebrows works to avoid intensity feeling confrontational. Second, synchronize your blinks with her speech rhythm. When she finishes a sentence, allow one slow blink as if savoring her words. Third, break contact only when she does, but return after counting 2 heartbeats. That dance of attention and restraint creates magnetic tension. History offers cautionary tales, though. Emperor Nero's infamous snake stare, unblinking and unnaturally wide, was said to unnerve even seasoned generals. The line between intriguing and unsettling rests in subtlety. Marcus Aurelius wrote of calibrating presence like tuning a lyre. The gaze should be firm enough to show focus, soft enough to show humanity. Practice this today. Next conversation, note when discomfort tempts you to look away. Instead, lean in mentally, not physically, and observe the exact shade of her irises. That shift from avoidance to curiosity transforms your energy from skittish to captivating, because when she feels truly seen, not just looked at, she'll chase the rare man who knows the difference. Marcus Aurelius ruled the known world, yet carried himself with the quiet humility of a student. That paradox is the essence of the 15th Stoic strategy. The philosopher King Aura isn't about titles or wealth. It's the subtle alchemy of confidence and grace that makes others instinctively defer to you. Picture 2 men at a dinner party. One name drops his promotions and luxury watch collection. The other, he's the one who quietly shifts his chair so the waiter can pass, then effortlessly steers conversation toward the shy guest in the corner. That's royalty redefined, not by what you take, but by the space you create for others. The Stoics called this megalopsychia, the virtue of great-souledness, where your actions whisper status so clearly you never need to shout it. History preserves striking examples. When Persian ambassadors visited Sparta, they expected King Agesilaus to be enthroned in regal finery. Instead, they found him sitting on a plain wooden bench, eating the same barley bread as his soldiers. That deliberate simplicity didn't diminish his authority, it amplified it. Modern research explains why. Studies on nonverbal dominance show that people who display quiet power cues like measured gestures, selective eye contact, and calm during disruptions are perceived as 37% higher status than those relying on flashy displays. It's the difference between a man who needs everyone to know he's important and one who lets them discover it. But here's where most misinterpret the philosopher king ideal. It's not about false modesty or hiding achievements. The Stoic approach is radical transparency, owning your strengths without needing external validation. Imagine mentioning your marathon finish casually when someone complains about early mornings, not as a boast but as a natural reference point. Or subtly adjusting your cuff to reveal calluses from rock climbing when hands are compared, letting the evidence speak for itself. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his Meditations, recording personal flaws with brutal honesty alongside quiet acknowledgments of his growth. That balanced confidence without arrogance creates a magnetism no status symbol can match. The modern application: next time you're tempted to prove your worth, pause. Instead of listing credentials when asked what you do, try, "I helped build medical AI, spent last weekend debugging code that could detect tumors earlier." See how that lands. Specifics demonstrate competence. The lack of self-promotion signals security. Or when crisis strikes, a spilled drink, a cancelled flight, respond not with outrage, but with the amused calm of someone who's weathered real storms. That unshaken center tells her more about your inner kingdom than any LinkedIn badge ever could. Because true status isn't declared, it's recognized in the quiet moments when lesser men would scramble to justify themselves. The Stoics were obsessives about hygiene, not for vanity, but as an act of reverence for the vessel carrying their philosophy. Marcus Aurelius began his mornings with meticulous grooming, not to impress the Senate, but because neglecting the body meant neglecting discipline itself. This 16th Stoic way bridges ancient wisdom with modern magnetism, mastering appearance as an extension of character, not a mask for insecurity. Think of it as armoring your presence. Every detail from fingernails to collar stays signaling silent competence. The key isn't chasing trends or expensive labels. It's adopting what the Romans called cultus, the art of purposeful refinement. A man who irons his shirts isn't obsessed with fabric. He's practicing the Stoic discipline of bringing order to chaos, one steam-pressed seam at a time. Consider the contrast between two men at a coffee shop. One wears ill-fitting joggers with yesterday's coffee stains, his hair matted from skipping showers. The other, dark jeans tailored just enough to hint at intentionality, a simple wool sweater smelling faintly of cedar, not overpowering but intriguing when she leans in to whisper. That difference isn't about genetic luck, it's about daily rituals that whisper self-respect. Historical texts reveal Stoic hygiene routines that would put modern influencers to shame. Seneca scrubbing with strigils in ice seawater baths, Cotto's precise beard trimming before dawn battles. These weren't acts of vanity, they were declarations that how you present yourself reflects how you honor your place in the world. Modern research dismantles the "looks don't matter" myth cleanly. A Yale study found that well-groomed men receive 34% more professional opportunities and 28% more romantic attention, regardless of baseline attractiveness. But here's the Stoic twist: your grooming shouldn't scream for compliments. It should hum with quiet assurance. Opt for natural scents over synthetic colognes, bergamot, vetiver, or sandalwood, applied so lightly she only notices when inches away. Keep hair trimmed to the point where it looks effortlessly maintained, not salon perfect. The goal isn't to appear wealthy, but to telegraph that you respect yourself too much to be slovenly. Like a samurai polishing his sword before battle, your grooming rituals are meditative acts of self-mastery. Wardrobe follows the same philosophy. The Stoics championed simplicitas, not austerity, but intentional minimalism. Build a capsule wardrobe where every piece serves multiple purposes. A navy blazer that dresses up chinos for dates but pairs with denim for weekends. Leather boots that shine under suit pants yet withstand autumn hikes. Notice how none of this requires designer labels. That's the point. Fit matters more than cost. Have a tailor take in the shoulders of a thrifted jacket, and suddenly you're not wearing used clothing, you're wearing something crafted uniquely for your frame. When she compliments your style, the Stoic response isn't "thanks, it's Armani," it's a shrug and "this old thing," because your confidence isn't mortgaged to logos. Final touch: nails. Gladiators soaked theirs in vinegar to harden them, a reminder that even warriors prioritized grooming. Yours should be filed short with no trace of dirt, cuticles pushed back but not overly manicured. The message: these hands build, fix, and create, they're not pampered. That balance between refinement and rugged utility is where Stoic appearance thrives. Because when every detail whispers disciplined self-respect without begging for approval, she starts seeing what most men hide beneath flashy accessories. A man who needs no validation to know his worth. Cleans, the Stoic philosopher who succeeded Zeno, spoke of living in harmony with nature's rhythms, not forcing outcomes, but positioning yourself where opportunities unfold organically. This 17th Stoic strategy isn't about manufactured coincidences or creepy lurking. It's about aligning your daily rhythms with hers in a way that feels effortless, even inevitable. Picture this: instead of agonizing over perfect texts or staged meet-cutes, you simply exist in spaces where your paths might naturally cross: the independent bookstore she mentioned loving, the weekend farmer's market she frequents, the obscure art exhibit aligning with her taste. The difference: you're not there for her. You're there because these places resonate with your authentic interests too. That distinction between desperation and synchronicity is what transforms random encounters into something that feels fated. History offers a masterclass in this through Cleans himself. As a young man hauling water by night to fund his studies, he didn't beg Zeno for mentorship. He positioned himself where philosophy unfolded, laboring near the Stoa Poikile until his dedication caught the master's eye. Modern psychology explains why this works. The mere exposure effect proves we're drawn to familiar faces, even if we can't recall where we've seen them. When you're that guy she keeps bumping into at the pottery studio or jazz bar, always engrossed in your own world, never straining for her attention, her brain starts tagging you as someone significant. Not because you forced the connection, but because you allowed it to emerge naturally. But here's the critical boundary: authenticity is everything. Stalking her gym schedule or faking interest in paddleboard yoga reeks of neediness. The Stoic approach: audit your actual routines first. Maybe you've been meaning to try that Balkan folk music night she mentioned, or your chef friend just invited you to the cooking class she posts about. Those overlaps where her world genuinely intersects with yours are the sweet spots. Like Marcus Aurelius writing, "What's good for the hive is good for the bee." Align your movements with communal currents rather than single-minded pursuit. Practical tip: map out 3 places or events that authentically excite you and might interest her. Not stalker hubs like her apartment lobby, but cultural spaces where curious people gather. Lecture series, indie film screenings, foraging workshops. Then go not as a hunter but as a participant. When you eventually cross paths, your shared context, your into mycology too, does the heavy lifting. That's the Stoic art of serendipity: not chasing, but letting the universe conspire by first conspiring with your own truth. Because when she keeps finding you where her passions live, she'll start believing you belong there together. Seneca once wrote about deliberately walking past bakeries to savor the smell of fresh bread without indulging, a practice in delaying gratification that sharpens both discipline and desire. That same principle holds explosive potential when applied to attraction. While most men rush to escalate physically, grabbing hands too soon, leaning in for impulsive kisses, the Stoic master knows the magnetic power of restraint. Picture this: you're on a first date, chemistry crackling between you. As you walk her home, your fingers brush against hers. Instinct screams to intertwine them immediately. But instead, you let the contact linger just shy of connection, allowing the tension to build until she's the one who closes the gap. That pause, what the Stoics called intermissio, transforms casual touch into something electric. It's not playing hard to get, it's practicing the ancient art of making moments matter. History offers a visceral example in Seneca's letters describing Roman feasts. The most sophisticated hosts wouldn't serve delicacies immediately. They'd let guests smell roasting meats, hear sizzling pans, watch as servants carried platters just out of reach. By the time food arrived, anticipation had amplified enjoyment tenfold. Modern neuroscience confirms this. Studies on dopamine release show that the brain's reward circuitry fires more intensely during anticipation than actual consumption. Apply this to dating. When you withhold touch just long enough for her to notice its absence, you're not rejecting intimacy. You're engineering an experience where her own desire does the work for you. But here's where most men misapply the strategy. Delayed gratification isn't about freezing her out or manufacturing artificial distance. The Stoic approach is subtler. On that same date, you might let your knee accidentally graze hers under the table, then casually shift away as if unaware. Or when laughter brings your faces inches apart, you hold eye contact a heartbeat longer than expected before leaning back with a smirk. These micro-pauses create what psychologists call goal gradient effect. The closer we get to something we want, the more intensely we pursue it. Like a traveler glimpsing an oasis just beyond the next dune, she'll instinctively lean into the space you've artfully left open. Practical application. Next date, institute a 3-second rule. When natural opportunities for contact arise, helping her with a coat, passing a shared dessert, let your hands linger almost imperceptibly before pulling away. Watch how she subconsciously mirrors your movements, seeking renewed contact. Because when you master the pause before pleasure, you're not just following Stoic wisdom, you're becoming the kind of man who turns fleeting moments into cravings she can't ignore. Heraclitus, the philosopher who whispered truths in riddles, earned his nickname, the Obscure, not by accident but by design. He buried his deepest insights in cryptic fragments. No man ever steps in the same river twice, knowing mystery invites pursuit. This 19th Stoic strategy isn't about playing games. It's about preserving pockets of uncharted territory within yourself that quietly pull her in. Think of it as emotional archaeology, revealing just enough artifacts to spark her curiosity, while leaving entire layers of your world waiting to be excavated. Consider two men at a gallery opening. One overshares his entire life story within minutes: divorced parents, career setbacks, therapy breakthroughs. The other, he mentions restoring antique compasses as a hobby, then pivots to ask about her thoughts on the exhibition. When she probes, he smiles. Let's just say I've spent nights polishing brass until my fingers ached, trying to realign needles that haven't pointed true north in centuries. That's the difference between dumping information and offering invitations. The first leaves nothing to discover. The second makes her lean in, wondering what other obsessions hide beneath his calm surface. History offers striking examples of this principle. Leonardo da Vinci filled notebooks with mirror writing, not just to protect ideas, but to ensure only the truly curious would decipher them. Medieval alchemists encoded recipes in symbolic poetry, knowing the act of decoding would bond the student to the craft. Modern psychology confirms why this works. Studies on information gaps show our brains fixate on unanswered questions like mental itches demanding to be scratched. When you casually mention studying Aramaic or blacksmithing without elaboration, you're not being evasive, you're giving her mind a puzzle it can't resist solving. But here's where most stumble: mystery without warmth feels like aloofness. The Stoic balance, shared generously but never exhaustively. Talk about your falconry apprenticeship, but save the story about the goshawk that refused to return for your third date. Mention your collection of pre-Columbian artifacts, but let her discover your theory about their cosmic symbolism over midnight texts. Like Heraclitus, who wrapped profound truths in poetic ambiguity, your disclosures should feel like gifts slowly unwrapped, not fact sheets dumped on the table. Practical tip: audit your conversation habits. Replace "I'm into archery" with "there's something meditative about drawing a 70-pound recurve bow at dawn, the way your muscles tremble just before release." Then stop, let her ask what that feels like, because when you become a man of layered passions rather than an open book, she'll find herself turning your pages long after others have been skimmed and set aside. Marcus Aurelius distributed gold coins anonymously during Saturnalia, not for praise, but because the act aligned with his nature. That's the essence of the 20th Stoic strategy, deploying generosity as a silent demonstration of abundance, not a transactional bid for affection. Picture this: you discover her favorite childhood author is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Instead of announcing you'll buy his books for her, you stumble upon a first edition 100 Years of Solitude at a flea market. Weeks later, you casually slide it across the table after coffee. Saw this and thought you'd appreciate the marginalia. No fanfare, no expectation, just evidence that you listen deeply and act with quiet intention. That's the difference between Stoic charity and simping. One builds intrigue through unexpected abundance, the other reeks of calculated investment. The Stoics practiced philanthropia, not the modern diluted version, but the original Greek concept of loving what it means to be human. Seneca gifted friends vineyards not to indebt them, but to celebrate shared joy in cultivation. Musonius Rufus funded strangers' educations without demanding loyalty. These weren't random acts of kindness. They were strategic in the deepest sense, aligning resources with values to create ripple effects. Apply this today. When you overhear her mention a longing to try pottery, don't offer to fund classes. Instead, arrive at your next meetup with a hand-thrown mug from a local artisan. Figured you'd want to reverse engineer the craftsmanship. The gift becomes a conversation piece, not a receipt awaiting validation. Here's where most men fail. They mistake generosity for volume. 100 roses scream desperation. A single protea blossom from your grandmother's garden whispers thoughtfulness. Research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology confirms this. Recipients perceive small, highly personalized gifts as more meaningful than expensive generic ones. The Stoic twist: tie your offerings to shared experiences. After a conversation about her Nicaraguan heritage, you might track down a vintage postcard from Managua, not handed over like a trophy, but tucked into a book you lend her. These gestures signal something potent. You're a man who connects dots the world overlooks, but the critical boundary lies in detachment. Epictetus warned, "When you give, never say I gave. Let it be as though the gift found its own way." That means no fishing for gratitude, no pointed reminders of your kindness. Like Marcus scattering coins in the dark, your generosity should leave space for her to wonder about the giver. Because when a woman encounters a man whose blessings come without strings, she doesn't just receive, she pursues the mystery of such radical abundance. And that's how Stoic giving becomes the ultimate silent game. Democritus, known as the laughing sage, wandered ancient Greece chuckling at human follies while others scowled, and that paradox holds the 21st Stoic secret. True strength isn't just weathering storms, it's finding genuine amusement in life's absurdities, especially when they come at your expense. Picture this: she playfully ribs you about your terrible dance moves or that time you spilled wine on her rug. Most men either crumble into self-deprecation or puff up defensively, but you throw your head back with a resonant laugh, not forced but flowing from some deep well of unshakable self-assurance. That split-second reaction does more than any comeback could. It broadcasts that your worth isn't so fragile it can't withstand a little jesting. The Stoics revered Democritus not for mindless giggling, but for his profound insight. Laughter is the ultimate power move against pettiness. When Emperor Hadrian's courtiers mocked Epictetus' limp, he didn't rage or wilt. He grinned and shot back. "Then I suppose my leg deserves the throne more than I do." That alchemy, turning potential humiliation into shared humor, disarms critics and draws admirers like nothing else. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies at the University of Kansas found that men who laugh authentically at themselves are perceived as 27% more confident and socially intelligent than those who don't. But here's the critical line the Stoics drew between self-amusement and self-mockery. Democritus never clowned for applause or became the court jester. His laughter wasn't performative, it was philosophical. Apply this distinction next time she teases you. If she quips about your questionable karaoke song choice, join her grin but volley back with, "What can I say?" My rendition of my heart will go on sinks ships and relationships. See how that lands. You're not groveling for approval or retaliating, but dancing on the high ground where her barbs can't pierce your armor. Like Cotto the Younger, who chuckled while his political rivals hurled insults, your mirth signals something potent. You're too grounded to be shaken by words. Practice this today. Recall your most cringeworthy recent blunder, the burnt dinner, the autocorrect disaster, the gym fail. Now rehearse laughing about it in the mirror until the sting fades into a smirk. That internal shift from wincing at flaws to cherishing them as comic relief transforms how you carry yourself. Because when she sees you're the first to laugh at life's hiccups, she'll stop laughing at you and start laughing with you. And that shared joy, that's the soil where real connection grows. Musonius Rufus didn't just teach Stoicism, he lived it in the spaces he inhabited, insisting that our surroundings should mirror the clarity we seek within. The 22nd Stoic strategy isn't about staging your life for Instagram. It's about crafting environments that whisper your values so clearly you never have to announce them. Picture two apartments, one cluttered with impulse buys and takeout containers, the other with a single shelf of well-loved books, a handmade wooden desk, and nothing more. That difference isn't just aesthetic, it's philosophical. The Stoics called this oikeiosis, the art of aligning external harmony with internal truth. Your space isn't just where you live, it's a silent ambassador for your mindset. Take Seneca's letters describing his retreats to modest country villas, spaces free from Corinthian marble but rich in tranquility. He didn't preach austerity for its own sake, he curated environments that fostered focus. Modern neuroscience confirms his wisdom. Princeton researchers found that physical clutter reduces cognitive function, while minimalist spaces enhance concentration and emotional regulation. Apply this today by auditing your bedroom like a Stoic general inspecting his barracks. That pile of unsorted laundry, it's not just messy, it's visual noise undermining your discipline. The half-finished projects strewn across your desk, their unresolved intentions weighing on your subconscious. Feng Shui principles align perfectly here, not as mystical dogma but as practical psychology. Position your bed to face the door, the command position, not to attract Kai, but to subconsciously reinforce security, a primal cue that you're prepared for whatever enters your domain. But here's where most misinterpret Stoic minimalism. This isn't about barren white walls or monastic self-denial. It's about intentional selection. Marcus Aurelius' private study reportedly held just 3 objects: a writing table, a lamp, and a small bust of his mentor Rusticus. Each served a purpose, each carried meaning. Translate this to your space. Swap mass-produced posters for one original sketch from a local artist whose story moves you. Replace the generic live, laugh, love decor with a single artifact from your travels, maybe that volcanic rock from Santorini or the hand-carved chess set from Marrakesh. These curated fragments become conversation portals when she visits, silently testifying to a life lived deliberately. Practical application. Start with what the Japanese call danshai, the art of discarding unnecessary possessions. Not ruthless purging, but asking of each item, does this align with who I'm becoming? That gym membership tag from 2 years ago, recycled. The gifted scented candle you'll never light. Donated. The result, a space where every remaining object serves either utility or inspiration. Notice how this differs from performative minimalism. You're not creating a showroom, but a living manifesto. When she steps into your world and finds walls lined with well-thumbed philosophy texts, a guitar resting on a stand not hidden in its case, and a kitchen stocked with spices instead of instant noodles, she's not just seeing your apartment. She's glimpsing your operating system. Lighting matters more than most realize. The Stoics rose with the sun for a reason. Natural light regulates circadian rhythms and serotonin production. But modern urban caves demand solutions. Swap harsh overhead bulbs for warm, dimmable lamps placed at varying heights to mimic firelight's primal comfort. Harvard studies show such lighting increases perceived attractiveness by up to 30%. Not because you've changed, but because the ambience frames you as the calm center of a sanctuary. Add one element of controlled chaos, maybe an asymmetrical bookshelf or a partially completed oil painting on an easel, to avoid sterile perfectionism. That balance telegraphs something potent. Here's a man who imposes order on his world but leaves room for spontaneity. The ultimate test: close your eyes in your space and inhale. The scent should whisper, not shout. Cedar, wood from properly stored woolens, maybe citrus from weakly cleaned hardwood, not the artificial mountain breeze of plug-in air fresheners. Like a Stoic's daily bath ritual, your environment's olfactory signature should signal cleanliness, not camouflage. When she leans back on your leather couch, the one rescued from a Paris flea market and restored by hand, and catches those layered subtleties, she's not just relaxing in your apartment. She's experiencing the physical manifestation of your philosophy, and that's when surroundings become the ultimate silent wingman. Seneca's piercing words in on the shortness of life cut to the core of modern distraction. You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire. That paradox, squandering time while craving endless more of it, holds an unexpected key to attraction. When a man treats his hours like currency, spending them with deliberate precision, he signals something rare, a life too rich to be paused for validation. Think of two men texting her. One responds instantly, day or night, his eagerness bleeding through the screen. The other, his replies come in waves, sometimes within an hour, sometimes a day later. Always with a warmth that suggests he simply emerged from something meaningful. That rhythm isn't indifference, it's the silent testimony of a man who honors his time like a Stoic honors virtue. History reveals how masters wielded this principle. Seneca himself, advisor to an emperor, prolific writer, and tutor to Nero, structured his days ruthlessly. His letters describe rising before dawn to claim stolen hours for philosophy, even as Rome's chaos swirled around him. That disciplined scarcity didn't repel people, it made his attention more coveted. Like a rare manuscript that can only be viewed by appointment, your time becomes valuable when you treat it as such. Modern research echoes this. A Journal of Social Psychology study found that individuals perceived as moderately busy were rated as 21% more desirable than those appearing either idle or overwhelmed. The sweet spot, projecting purposeful engagement without frantic depletion. But here's where most misinterpret the strategy. Fake busyness reeks of insecurity. Posting gym selfies at odd hours or dropping transparent hints about your crazy schedule. True Stoic scheduling isn't performative, it's protective. Block your calendar for deep work just as you would for a VIP meeting. Start morning rituals, whether journaling, cold plunges, or sketching, that are non-negotiable. When she asks why you didn't reply last night, the answer isn't "I was busy," but "I unplug after 10 to recharge." That subtle shift from excuse to declaration transforms your relationship with time from passive to sovereign. Practical hacks: apply Seneca's tripartite day. Divide waking hours into thirds for obligations, growth, and leisure. Use a physical planner, yes, paper, to force intentionality. Each commitment in ink becomes a contract with yourself. When scheduling dates, propose specific windows. Free after 7 on Thursday lands differently than whenever works. Notice how this avoids the desperate dance of mutual availability checks. Your calendar should resemble a Roman general's campaign map, strategic, with room to adapt, not a blank scroll begging to be filled, the ultimate litmus test. If your phone vanished for a day, would your absence be felt in unfinished commitments or missed opportunities to connect? Cultivate the former. Because when she sees you're a man who guards his time like a sacred trust, she'll stop expecting you to spend it recklessly and start vying for slots in your world. That's how Stoics turn hours into allure, not by withholding attention, but by making every moment given a deliberate gift. The Stoics spoke of sympatheia, not mere sympathy, but the profound understanding that all human experiences ripple through an invisible web of connection. Imagine sitting across from her, not reciting your travel resume like some conquest checklist, but sharing that evening in Marrakech when a toothless vendor insisted you sip mint tea as his grandchildren giggled at your clumsy Arabic. That's sympatheia in action, revealing vulnerability through universal moments rather than performing achievement. Ancient texts describe Marcus Aurelius pausing mid-battle to write about enemy soldiers, how they loved their families, feared death, bled just like his men. That recognition of shared humanity didn't weaken his resolve, it deepened his leadership. Here's how this translates to attraction. Most men monopolize conversations with heroic anecdotes or sterile facts about their Bali detox retreat. The Stoic approach: frame your stories as invitations, not monologues. Instead of "I summited Kilimanjaro, try." There's this surreal moment at 4 a.m. on the ascent, when your legs feel like lead and everyone's too exhausted to speak, but you lock eyes with strangers from 12 countries, and suddenly it's not about the peak anymore. See the shift? You're not boasting, you're offering her a window into a collective human experience. Studies in the Journal of Social Psychology confirm this tactic's power. Speakers who highlight relatable emotions in narratives are perceived as 34% more likable and 19% more trustworthy than those focusing on personal triumphs alone. History whispers this lesson through the travels of the original Stoic, Zeno. After his merchant ship wrecked near Athens, he didn't regale locals with tales of lost riches. He wandered into a bookstore, struck up conversations about survival and fresh starts, and founded a philosophy school within years. His brilliance lay in recognizing that connection thrives on shared fragility, not polished perfection. Practical application. Next time conversation turns to passions, yours or hers, mine, for the human over the heroic. Did you train for a marathon? Don't lead with your finish time. Mention the elderly man who handed you oranges at mile 20, his knuckles rough with decades of harvests, and how that kept you running when your body quit. That's sympatheia, bridging your story to hers through threads of common emotion. Because when she senses you're a man who sees life as a tapestry of interconnected stories rather than a solo conquest, she'll instinctively draw closer, not to your achievements, but to the depth with which you perceive the world. The magic lies in the pause after your anecdote, when her eyes flicker with recognition. I've felt that too. That silent moment where your shared humanity hums between you is where real connection sparks. And unlike forced charm or rehearsed lines, it's a bond no one can fake. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. That's the essence of the 25th and final Stoic way to make her chase you without saying a word, becoming what Camus later called the invincible summer within yourself. Picture this: a man who's faced rejections, awkward silences, even heartbreaks, yet carries himself with the quiet certainty of a tree that bends in storms but never uproots. That's not indifference, it's resilience forged through daily practice of these 24 principles we've explored. When your presence radiates the unshakable calm of a man who knows his worth isn't negotiable, something remarkable happens. She stops wondering if you're interested and starts wondering why she's so intrigued by you. Think of how sunlight needs no announcement. It simply falls where it will, warming everything it touches. That's the energy you cultivate when you combine stoic presence with strategic absence, when your generosity flows without expectation and your silence speaks louder than rehearsed charm. Historical texts describe Marcus Aurelius presiding over military campaigns and plague outbreaks with the same unwavering composure. His secret: he'd trained his mind like a muscle, repeating stoic mantras until they became reflex. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies on emotional resilience show that people who internalize empowering self-narratives recover from setbacks 30% faster and are perceived as more socially attractive. But here's the alchemy. This isn't about turning yourself into some emotionless fortress. True invincibility lies in vulnerability channeled wisely. Imagine sharing a childhood failure over drinks, not with self-pity, but with the amused detachment of a man who's made peace with his past. That balance between strength and authenticity creates a pull no aloofness ever could. Like a samurai's sword that's both flexible and unbreakable, your resilience should whisper, "I've been tempered by fires you'll never see." Now consider how these 25 ways interlock like armor. Your stoic grooming and spatial awareness create the initial magnetism. Strategic absence and delayed gratification build intrigue. Amor Fati and the reserve clause eliminate desperation, while sympatheia and purposeful storytelling foster depth. Together, they form an ecosystem of attraction where every glance, pause, and gesture communicates more than paragraphs ever could. The Roman poet Virgil wrote, "They can because they think they can." That's the final piece, believing in your own invincibility until it becomes reality. Not the fragile arrogance of the untested, but the quiet assurance of a man who's fallen enough times to know he'll always rise. When she glimpses that in you, through your humor in setbacks, your grace under pressure, your refusal to beg for attention, she'll chase the mystery of a man who needs no validation to shine. And if you're wondering how to take this foundation into deeper connection, that's where Stoic relationships begin, a map for navigating intimacy without losing yourself. But that's a philosophy for another day. For now, stand like the oak in winter, knowing your roots run deeper than any storm. Because when you embody that unshakable core, the world and she can't help but lean in. So we've climbed the Stoic ladder together, 25 rungs of silent mastery that transform how you move through the world. Presence that anchors you in the moment. Calm that deflects pettiness, amor fati that turns setbacks into stepping stones. Each principle isn't just a tactic, it's a thread in the fabric of a man who doesn't chase, he attracts. But here's the truth no ancient text will spell out for you. Wisdom untested is just theory. The Stoics didn't scribble their meditations for applause, they forged them in the fires of real life. Your mission now, choose 3 of these ways, not the easiest, but the ones that prickle your resistance, and wear them like armor for the next 30 days. Track what shifts. Does your barista start remembering your order without asking? Do strangers hold eye contact a half-second longer? That's the silent alchemy of these practices. They don't just change how she sees you, they reshape how you see yourself. History whispers a warning through the fate of Commodus, the emperor who inherited Marcus Aurelius' throne but none of his discipline. He mistook birthright for greatness, spectacle for strength. Don't let these strategies become just another mental trophy. The true test isn't knowing them, it's living them when no one's watching, when the date cancels last minute. When the promotion falls through, when your text goes unanswered, that's when the Stoic within either crumples or stands unwavering. Before you click away, ask yourself this: which philosopher's shadow will you step into first? The unshakable calm of Epictetus, who turned slavery into sovereignty. The playful resilience of Democritus, laughing at life's absurdities. Or perhaps Marcus himself, ruling your inner Rome before seeking to conquer hers. The choice isn't about imitation, it's about inspiration. Your version of Stoic mastery won't look like anyone else's. It'll carry the fingerprints of your struggles, the timbre of your unique voice. Hit like if you're ready to stop chasing and start commanding. Subscribe if you want the next chapter, where we dive into how these principles transform not just attraction, but every relationship in your life. Because the man who masters silent presence isn't just unforgettable to women, he becomes a force in every room he enters. The ball's in your court, Philosopher King. Time to play.